Welcome everyone to our regular scheduled meeting of the Walpole Select Board on July 18th, 2023. It is now 7 o'clock, so we will call this meeting to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, Select Board member Jim O'Neill will be participating remotely during the meeting, and every vote will be taken by roll call. Otherwise, the meeting will proceed in usual course. And now we may stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will also mention that Select Board member Ben Barrett will not be here this evening. We are now ready for our first item on the agenda. Do you have a motion to open the public?
Motion to open the public hearing?
We have a second?
Second.
And we'll do a roll call vote. Jim? The motion to open the public hearing.
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I will be voting yes as well. It is a vote 4-0-0. The public hearing is now open. Tonight we're talking about the Tessie Bar and Kitchen for alteration of licensed premises at 1006 Main Street. Mark and Lauren Pollock, you are here to speak on this, and we've received your plans for that expansion. Do you want to come up and tell us a little bit about it?
Good evening. So we submitted the plans to you. You probably have seen there's been sort of a lot of movement going on. We opened Tessie's back in 2019 in 600 square feet above, upstairs for dining area and downstairs for prep area. And it worked. So we were delighted. Third time's a charm. The first time was a coffee shop, second time a wine bar, and Tessie's, like our daughter Tessie, third time's a charm. So obviously we, have the need for more space. I think the outdoor dining really showed us that, because that space can fill up, and then when the cool weather comes, we are turning people away. And volume really is our enemy in the cooler weather. So we were delighted to be able to improve that corner and be able to take the space next door and really sort of round it out. I mean, we've been at this for 13 years now. We're committed to that corner. We're committed to the community. So basically, what we would be doing is, it's an additional, I think it is 1782 square feet, which would increase our dining area. We'd be shifting the bar to the other side, and then the kitchen downstairs gives us more food prep area. It allows us to have an additional 2 bathrooms, which is huge. And then in those winter months, those tables shift inside, so we have that dining inside. I think with this.
It'd be great for the kitchen also, because the guys in the kitchen have been packed in there.
Yeah.
And the storage has been a problem, so it's going to be a windfall for everybody. The condition of working for our employees in the kitchen is going to get so much better. The air quality in there, the AC in there, so they're looking forward to that. And we're definitely looking forward to more storage.
Yeah.
We're bursting out of the seats there, but yeah.
Yeah, and also, I think the other thing that's huge to consider too is, in the summertime, we take on a lot of seasonal employees, and now we'll be able to make those into permanent year-round jobs, so.
Yeah, because once the outdoor seating goes, Tessie's become very small.
Yeah.
And, people are driving around, let's go to Tessie's, but, it's probably full. It's Friday at 7 o'clock, there's only 30 seats. So we want to change that around and offer more.
And so what will the seating go to from 30
It'll go from
seats to
30 to
80.
80? 30 to 80.
The bar is also,
But we find in the summertime, people will eat outside anyway, so it's
Yeah.
not like, it's just the crowd's shifting.
and opening the space up. I mean, for those of you who have been inside there, it can be a very narrow space. So to be able to kind of have more accessibility, a larger bar area.
And also we have extra bathrooms as well, so which is huge for us. And we needed those to hold on to the outdoor dining also. Yeah, so we're looking forward to it.
I think it's going to be a great addition, that
I think so, yeah.
the renovations that are taking place. I look forward to seeing that once the
It'll be a nice
unveiling.
surprise.
Yes,
happens.
exactly, the big reveal, like on
Yeah.
HGTV. right?
Yeah.
Big deal. Do we have questions from other board members concerning this?
I'm okay.
Or do you see if Jim has one?
Jim, do you have questions or comments for Mark?
So, first of all, again, I've been a big supporter of this project since the beginning and love what you guys are doing, so I'm going to support it. I did want to just note the letter that we got from the Walpole Co-op and ask that we pay particular attention to the concerns raised in that note as part of this. I know you will, but let's just make sure we do that, okay?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think there's a representative here that would also like to have a chance to speak on that. So we'll be hearing from them momentarily. Do we have anything else to add from Jim Crowley, police, fire, any of those natures to this? No? Okay. Would you like to come forward and kind of bring the attention to the letter that was sent to the select board?
Yes, good evening, Board Select. I'm Nadine Bailey from Mackey & Mackey, represent Walpole Cooperative Bank. I just want to make it clear that Walpole Cooperative Bank does not object at all to the expansion. They welcome the development of the economic area down in Walpole downtown area. The issue that they have is just some concerns stemming from a 2014 sewer backup that occurred as a result of some grease buildup that was in a sewer line running from Raven's Nest, and it's believed that the owners of the Raven's Nest are the same as the applicant. And they just want to voice their concerns that the expansion adhere to sewer and water rules and regulations. And there was an issue, I guess, with the water runoff from the roof from the building into Walpole Coop's parking lot. So we would just ask that there be some type of storm water management controls put into place in preparation or for the expansion.
Can I just ask, we haven't seen a copy of
If you
that letter.
wouldn't mind coming to the mic just to make sure that it
Sure.
can be recorded.
Yeah, sure. I would just ask that the letter be entered into the meeting, because we haven't seen a copy of it, so if you could maybe read it.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Sure.
it would make sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read it into?
Yep, that's
Okay,
fine.
so this is to the Walpole Select Board regarding the alteration of licensed premises for Coffee Perch, Inc., DBA Tessie's Bar and Kitchen, public hearing Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Dear board members, as counsel for and on behalf of Walpole Cooperative Bank, we respectfully submit this letter to be entered into the record and for your consideration regarding the above caption application for alteration of licensed premises. As an abutter of Tessie's Bar and Kitchen, the applicant, located at 1006 Main Street, Walpole Co-op, takes no issue with the restaurant's expansion and fully supports economic development in the downtown Walpole area. However, Walpole Co-op would like to enter into the record its concern with the applicant's ability to successfully adhere to state and local sewer and water rules and regulations, as well as adhere to stormwater management best practices. The first concern stems from a sewer backup that occurred on October 26, 2014, and entered the basement of Walpole Co-op's building located at 982 Main Street. The overflow caused significant damage to Walpole Co-op's building, including but not limited to substantial costs for its repair. The sewer backup was caused by a grease buildup in the sewer line running from the Raven's Nest located at 998 Main Street. It is believed that the Raven's Nest and the applicant are owned by the same individuals/entities. If the board should grant the application, Walpole Co-op would request that in doing so, the town of Walpole require the applicant to fully comply with all current and future state and local sewer rules and regulations without exceptions and without waivers. The second concern has to do with the volume of stormwater runoff emanating from the back of the applicant's building into Walpole Co-op's parking lot. Walpole Co-op requests the town of Walpole require that any expansion of the applicant's restaurant include a stormwater management plan that complies with all local and state rules and regulations. Thank you for your time and attention. Very respectfully, Nadine M. Bailey, on behalf of Walpole Cooperative Bank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You would like to come back up to the mic and answer to that?
John Davis, contractor for the project at Tessie's Bar and Grill. In regards to the incident that the bank is talking about, it was 9 years ago. It was never proven that the grease buildup came from the Raven's Nest, so it's unsubstantiated. It's just assumed it came from there. What we've been doing consistently, and we send the reports to Rick Madison, is it Rick Madison? Rick Madison. We pay, it costs us about $3,000 to jet the lines from behind the Raven's Nest all the way out to the fire department. We just did it about a month ago. We hire a Hockman to come in with their truck, and actually when we're jetting it, we actually suck up so there's no debris that runs downstream. So we've been pretty vigilant about that. Secondly, we've done is that we've installed additional grease traps. In this renovation, we've put oversized grease traps. We have 3 grease traps in Tessie's now at this point. We were only required to have them on the 3-bay sink, but we have additional grease traps. So it's, we're just adding additional internal grease traps. We also have a contract with Wind River that they service those grease traps, and when we get them serviced, I think we're getting them serviced like once a month now, and really you technically probably could service them every three months, but we're doing it once a month, and we're sending the reports to DPW so that making sure that there's no issues. But as far as that backup that, we feel bad that did happen to the bank, but it was never, founded that it came from the Raven's Nest Bar and Grill, So, and as far as the stormwater management goes, there's no expansion of footprint, there's no expansion of the building. The stormwater runoff that's there, it's been the same prior to them owning it. So there's nothing there. They're not filling in any surfaces, to make them impervious. It's just what it is. And unfortunately now, we seem like we're getting a large amounts of rain than we've normally had, but it's Mother Nature.
Rick, do you want to just comment towards the reports that you're receiving, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. Rick Mattson, DPW Director. With regard to the grease remediation systems that they've installed, as with any grease remediation system, you can install all you want. If you don't maintain it properly, it's not going to work. They have been vigilant in maintaining theirs. I'm not totally convinced that you're there yet as to where you need. There's still being grease discharged to that system. Not nearly in the levels that it once was. With regard to it was never proven that it came from the Raven's Nest. I can guarantee you it didn't come from the bank. And there are only 2 buildings on that line, so that, you're kind of trying to mislead people, I think. But anyway, the remediation system they have is working. I would suggest that we continue to monitor it, and if it's proven to be not effective, then we take more action. There was one point in time we had requested an external grease trap, which is probably what they should have. It was very cost prohibitive. We decided in agreement with the plumbing inspector, we decided to allow them to install this, I think it's a Thermocool system or something that they installed. And it works, but it's not 100% effective. So,
And do you think the new upgrades with the expansion and the additional grease traps will help and improve on that?
yes. Provided that they're maintained properly.
And right now, you're receiving like the monthly reports from that, or?
Sometimes it's like pulling teeth getting them. They don't always just send them along. I have to give you a little reminder once in a while, so.
Okay, but as far as we know, it is being serviced, through a service contract.
Yes. They have a contract with Wind River. I believe that somebody was supposed to come on the 29th. Don't know if that ever happened.
I sent you that email, so we had.
You sent me an email saying they were coming, but you were gonna follow up with a receipt and
It did attach copies of the service report invoice.
didn't come to me.
I'm happy to forward it again to you.
But anyway, it is an issue. And if it's not properly maintained, it's gonna be an issue. The sewer and water department checks it every 2 weeks. They check the system. So,
Do anyone on the board have a follow-up with all that information that was just explained?
You can go to Jim first if you want.
Jim?
No, nothing. I'm satisfied with what I've heard. Thanks.
I'm all set.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I appreciate your working on, to expand the building. I think you've got a great restaurant there, and I think the extra space will be really nice, especially in the winter. I do appreciate you staying on top of the grease issue, you know, that all restaurants have, and ask you to, you know, be vigilant and stay on top of that. If you have any issues, you know, let us know and work it out with the town, so that's what I would say, but I do appreciate it, I'm in favor of the project. Absolutely, agree. Agree. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Agreement, just as long, with the service contract, I assume that with, you know, any sort of expansion, additional grease traps that are going above and beyond, new system going on, I would hope that there continues to be an improvement on that issue, and the continuation of the contracts, and getting that information to Rick on a timely manner would be important. As far as the stormwater, I think that is kind of a challenging one, because that building has been the same shape and footprint since I know of it. There is a slope from the back of that building towards Walpole. It has been that way from the post office in that area. I'm not sure if looking at any sort of gutter system or anything that could help divert some of it somehow. But I know that building is pretty much been the way it is. You are making improvements, and it's a corner of town that everyone is driving right into. So any of those improvements and seeing that expansion, I think it's going to be great for the town. Is there anyone else while we were in the public hearing that would like to come forward and speak?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll second that.
All right, and we'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am an aye. The public hearing is now closed. So now we can move forward with the vote for the alteration of the license.
Make a motion to approve the request of Tessie's Bar and Kitchen for alteration of their licensed premises at 1006 Main Street.
I'll second that.
We'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am an aye. That is a 4-0 vote. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda for tonight is a request of Oshnick Realty Holdings LLC for a lodging house license at 81 Diamond Street. Did anyone come forward? Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. So the board has received a number of letters from the neighborhood concerning this. I just wanted to let everyone know that after we go through this process, I will allow about 3 members of the neighborhood to come up and speak, and I would ask that you keep your comments to about 2 minutes and bring new and relevant information and not to be repetitive. I think we've received at this point 10 letters, in which I have read through all of these, and we do take your comments and thoughts seriously. This is the neighborhood, this is your immediate community, and we just ask when you come up that you address all the questions to the board. So, if you can begin and kind of go over what you're seeking with this project and looking for the lodging license.
So it's, excuse me.
And
So-
introduce yourself as well, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Anthony Yeba. I'm the owner of 81 Diamond Street. The building was an office space. It has some commercial space in it as well. It has an apartment upstairs. What I'm trying to do is convert the office space into lodges, into a lodge. Basically, there'll be 6 rooms. I think there's 6 rooms in it. And just looking to get some sort of, some sort of use out of the building. It's pretty simple.
And so you're looking at for 6 rooms.
I believe it's 6.
I think the plans that we received were 5.
I'm sorry, it's 5 rooms.
Okay. And then you also mentioned an apartment up above. Is that, has that been sorted out to be a apartment with the proper permitting and every of that nature?
Yeah, so I did some research with the previous owner, and there was a permit pulled. It was approved by a board. to have it as an apartment with somebody, whoever's in the apartment is a caretaker of the building. And the tenant that we are looking at putting in there will be handling management of the property.
We have a number, thank you for that information. I'm sure we're going to have more questions for you. Do we want to start with questions for Anthony?
We have the information for who that person is, who's the caretaker of
Well,
the building?
we're
the townhouse?
we're still in the process of looking.
Yeah.
It really comes down to if we put the lodge in place, then we will have to get somebody in there. That'll be part of their duties, is taking care of the lodge, the bathrooms, cleaning and stuff like that.
And if there's ever like a gap and somebody's not in there, or let's say you open the lodge but you don't fill that apartment, would it be you?
Yeah, I have family members that can fill that.
Or somebody, you would assign somebody?
I would assign somebody. I've got people in my company that
Yeah.
could do that as well.
Yeah, we would just want to
There
know
wouldn't
who
be
it
a
is.
gap.
Yeah. We want to know who it is and, you know.
I've got employees at my company fighting to be in that.
I imagine you do, yeah.
Unit,
I know.
so-
I would too.
So, I mean, I don't see a problem with that.
That actually leads to my next question, Ally, which is who is gonna sort of fill these spots? So you just said employees of your company. That makes a lot of sense. Potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
So
So,
you're committing to that. But like,
yeah, so-
what do you envision for the people
so,
who?
I mean, the units are being remodeled, kind of like on a higher end. You know, we're putting good quality furniture and the kitchen, the tile, and the bathrooms. So we're going to be, the rent's not going to be inexpensive. So we're looking for kind of like professionals, maybe, people, new kids out of college that are going to college and might want to take the train, which is right there. So we're trying to find that type of tenant. I want to try to keep it. I want to have good tenants in there because right across from there, 71 Diamond Street, I own that building as well. And the rear apartment in there's, my mother's moving in there next week. So, I want to have, the area nice and clean and, good tenants. So we're gonna do our best to, like I said, the rents for the rooms are going to be pretty expensive. So we're hoping we can get some professionals in there.
Do you envision collecting rent weekly or monthly or?
Monthly.
Monthly.
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed you had the parking across the street, sort of on that island, that
Yes.
triangle sort of island. Do you use that for your work, for your business as well? Or?
I mean, we're going to use it for this.
You will?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now, I mean, I think there's people, I had a guy the other day park a bulldozer in there, and I had to call him up to tell him to get it out of there. So eventually, when we have occupancy, we'll be able to, stripe the parking lot over there and use it for the building.
Yeah, that's what I was at. So is there parking on the side of the street where your tenants would be living? Are there already spaces over there?
So there are some spaces permitted in the front of the building, in front of the lodge.
Right. How many do you know?
I think there's like 6 spots, 7 spots.
And will you allow people to kind of choose where they park, either there?
Yeah. I mean, I would envision that the people living in the building will park in front of the building, and then if they have guests over or anything like that, they have extra parking across the street.
Okay. Okay, I'm all set for now. Thank you. Okay.
Mark, do you have some questions?
No questions right now.
Jim, do you have questions that you would like to?
Yeah, really just one. Can you tell me, have you had any prior experience running lodging houses before?
Not lodging houses, but I do own quite a few apartments. I've got multifamilies in Mansfield. I've got a 4-family up in Medfield. So in several towns. I've got stuff in New Hampshire. So I am familiar with renting and taking care of the properties and things like that. The lodge, I don't see it being much of a learning curve, being that, we are involved we have our own real estate company, Cana Realty. So we're in the real estate business and we do a lot of VRBOs and things like that. So we're pretty familiar with renting properties like spaces. So I don't see any, to answer your question, no, not with the lodges, but with With rentals, I do have experience.
Okay. And have you done any business in the town of Walpole?
Yes, I own a business right on Main Street, Cana Home. We do a lot of remodels and things like that in town, building and stuff like that. So we're constantly pulling permits with the town. So yes, we do. Like I said, I do have a business in town, and then we own the Diamond Street properties.
Okay, and so the building inspector and, other organizations that oversee these kinds of buildings are familiar with you in Walpole, is that true?
Yes, it's true.
Okay. Have you had any issues with any of those things you've done here in town?
A couple ups and downs with this particular building. That's why it's been challenging, because there's really not much you can do with the building. And obviously, when we purchased it as a income property. So I've just, with that property, not with other, around town or anything like that, with clients or anything like that, but mainly on that building. But it's all been, we've got everything under control right now. I mean, building inspector's here, so he could probably answer that.
Okay, yeah, that'd probably be helpful. So they were issues related to building inspection?
Just things like when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with the building, and and then just parking issues. There's a 40-foot buffer zone around the building, and there was constant. He would have to come down because there was constantly people parking in that 40 zone buffer. Things like that. There's a tenant in there that's a fabricator, and having his materials past that 40 foot buffer, things like that. But we've gotten that under control. It's been messy because it's been under construction for so long. So we just did a push the last couple months to really clean it up, and we have. We just, once it's finished, it'll be finally cleaned up. It'll look good. It'll look right. I have some landscaping going in there this week. That's gonna, fix it up a little bit, make it look a little better. But just things like that.
Okay, and so my last question then is, the building has other, I don't know even how to ask it, but there are other things in the building besides the planned lodging house, correct?
Yes, there's a tool company that's been there for years in the basement level, and there's a fabrication, countertop fabrication company. I own the fabrication, all the equipment, everything. I rent that building to another fabricator. So that's in part of the building as well.
Any concerns with having what really sounds like light manufacturing in the same building as where you're gonna have people living?
So the fabricating building is a separate steel building that's attached to this building, so that's kind of a separate building. And as far as the building, the tool shop, it's not directly underneath. It's not underneath the apartments. It kind of has, a part of it is, and it's all been fire rated and everything by code. So we've done all the code, fire rating and stuff like that. But I would say only of the tool shop, I would say only 30% of it is underneath the actual apartments or the lodge.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about things like noise, and of course, if there's any hazardous materials that are on site, what the implications could be for the people that are living in the building.
Yeah, this company is like it's been on its way out. I'm actually just letting them stay until he decides he's trying to retire. So, I mean, there's nothing hazardous in there. They just basically they make these little computer parts. They're not using chemicals or anything like that. They've really scaled down. There's only like 3 people working in there at this point.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ally. I don't have any other questions.
All right. One follow-up question, since many of the board members went over some of the questions I had as well, is you mentioned the lease and looking for collecting monthly. Are you looking to do monthly leases? Are you looking for 6 months, 1 year?
Ideally, it would be to try to get the kind of clients we're looking for would be like at least year leases, and not have a lot of overturn. So, I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to try to get people for a minimum of a year. We're not looking to have, hopefully not a lot of turnover. Try to get people in there and have them sign 1-year leases on their room.
Okay. Another question that came up was for surveillance, parking, lighting, and things of that nature. You mentioned striping the lot. I think it would be a good idea to designate spots per room, because I think that can lead to arguments among people of the house if someone takes their preferred spot where there's not 6 spots up front that some are
Sure.
across the street. I personally, I think setting that from A, B, C, D, these are the guest spots, may reduce some conflict that could happen. But as far as lighting in that parking lot or security cameras and things of that nature, is that something you've looked into?
Very big on security, so we are going to add security on that building and on 71 Diamond, looking at the building. So we're gonna definitely have surveillance added. It's not finished yet. There's still we're still in the rough stages. We're getting our rough electric inspection tomorrow. And then I need to keep moving forward with the inspections, but definitely surveillance. We're definitely going to add surveillance there. And then also, as far as the parking, there is a wheelchair ramp, and there's one room that is actually wheelchair accessible, so that will have wheelchair parking up in the front.
Okay.
Chime in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a picture on Google Maps. So is the apartment's going to go into the 2-story portion of the building? And then next to that, I'm looking kind of farther back, behind the building, there's a 1-story portion. Will there be apartments in that?
So the 2-story, the top floor is the apartment,
Yeah.
and then the whole bottom floor of that building would be the lodge.
Will be the lodge. And then will that flow into the 1-story portion next to it, or is that
Yes.
a commercial business?
It'll flow into the 1-story.
The lodge?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no, it's all unoccupied at this point?
It's all unoccupied.
That apartment?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay, thanks.
And I know we're speaking of the lodging portion, and the apartment has now been, the permits from past have been seeking, and you're not seeking to expand that apartment?
No.
Okay, all right. If there's no other question, I'm going to ask Jim Crowley if you wouldn't mind coming up and just kind of going over the whole lodging license and what is allowed and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you. Jim Crowley, Building Commissioner. So it's in an LM zone, which lodging houses are allowed by right with a minimum of 4 rooms or more. He also has to follow the Massachusetts general laws under Section 140, Sections 22 to 33. So just to give you a breakdown of some of the laws, every resident has to have their ID checked and a registry book left at the main counter to prove who they are. As an owner of a lodge, you have to have records of who's staying in your lodging, for if there's an inquiry from the police, you can verify who the people staying there are. Mr. Yap will also be taking responsibility, because he's going to be the owner manager, that if there's any trouble there too, under Mass General Law 140, he actually would be liable for any fines from, depending on the violation, between $500 to $1,000 and 6 months to a year imprisonment. So it's pretty well regulated that if you are opening a lodging house, you have to obey the laws pretty good.
Okay. And, we said that the apartment's all set, and that is not looking to expansion, so we're looking at the 5 rooms for the lodging license. And this is an annual license that the select board would have to approve.
Yes, we do an inspection every year between the health department, fire department and building department. Every year do an inspection, an annual inspection to renew the license. Again, we'll do it on the building department side will be the egresses, the sprinkler system, the alarm system, to make sure it's habitable. The health department do their code, and fire department again are kind of code mingled with the building on, again, sprinkler system, alarm systems, life safety.
And Anthony mentioned that he has an electric inspection coming up. So far as the build has been happening, all the inspections are going well?
Yes, so he's coming up to electrical tomorrow, I believe, and then he's booked in for the rough inspection for the units on Wednesday. I believe we have a final inspection at the same time for the unit he updated some of the unit upstairs in the caretaker's unit. That's going to be getting inspection as well for a final. So that's going to be ready to be occupied.
Okay. Anything from the board to ask of Jim?
Not right now.
Just a quick one, Jim. So I asked Mr. Yeva about experience that we've had with him in town, and it sounds like there's been a little up and down on it. Anything that you'd be concerned about there?
So the main violations that were on that parcel of land is pertaining to a decision that was with the property with previous owners, which was multiple decisions from the board. The main one is they were put in a 40-foot buffer around the entire property. So the left side doesn't really fall into it because actually where the property ends, the 40-foot buffer is in some wetlands where the river runs through there. The main other issue was on the right-hand side where the parking is going to be. There's roughly going to be 5 spots. One's going to be handicap accessible spot, 4 more spots there, and the rest have to be across the road as there's no parking allowed on the rest of the property, on that portion of it. And that was mostly the violations were on. People were parking there. We had some debris, trash there that needed to be cleaned up. That's where most of our violations were falling onto that.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could just piggyback on that. So I'm looking at the picture of the parking lot again. So you said 9 parking spaces in front of the building itself?
No, 5.
5. I thought you said 4 more.
So there's 4 regular spots and 1 handicap accessible.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
I have a site plan if the board wants to see it on where the setback is, if you require
That's
it.
okay. No, I think I'm just curious because it's a pretty big parking lot. So for 5 cars, it's going to be a lot of just empty, asphalt. It's not really a question for you, but maybe more for the petitioner. But I wonder, it would probably cost some money, but I wonder if there's some improvements there. You mentioned landscape improvements. This would be a more sizable improvement, but turning that into a grass or sort of an open space that people could have kick a soccer ball around as opposed to, again, asphalt that you can't use for parking. I'm not trying to tell you how to spend your money. It's just a thought there.
I could see that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you're not only allowed to use it for 5 spaces.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it. One of the things I'm doing right now is, if you look at the picture, you can see it looks too commercial right now. It's the concrete goes right to the building.
Mm-hmm.
So I already have them digging out in front of the building, taking the tar out of there, and putting bushes in there to just kind of give it a little bit more of an a living look. But that's a great idea. I didn't think about that, but that's definitely something I would do.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
As so many people have put thoughts in, and we have reports from everything, I also wanted to ask Deputy Kilroy and Chief Barry to come up briefly and speak on this as well.
Good evening, Rob Kilroy, Deputy Chief of Police. We've had several inquiries made in regards to issues such as security and lighting that you've already addressed. They've indicated to us that they are going to address those issues, which satisfied us. One of the issues we do still have is regards to security within the common area and access to the building. So if the owner was able to address those issues, we would be appreciative. Other than that, we did some research. We have a couple of other lodges within the town right now. We do not respond to those in either any more or any less than any other residential complex, such as apartment buildings or et cetera. So there's really been no additional law enforcement issues with those types of buildings.
And the question also, because where this is, it's very much in a residential neighborhood compared to some of the other lodges we have in town. This one is in the middle, kind of with the church and the school. But as far as school zone on Diamond Street, that is not considered a school zone?
No, we also did some research on that this morning. It does not appear that Diamond Street is actually a school zone due to some of the requirements to be classified as such. I believe East Street by Blessed is, but Diamond Street is not.
And I would assume it's for the less, traffic and flow and things like that.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have a question for Deputy Kilroy?
Oh, thanks, Deputy.
Jim? All right, thank you.
All set.
Chief Barry?
Good evening, Paul Barry, Fire Chief. I'll just echo what Commissioner Crowley said. Annually, we do inspections on, we have 2 other lodging houses in town, regularly work in concert with them. Any violations, we know, take care of, and usually the property manager takes care of that relatively quickly. So we're comfortable with that. 527 CMR1, the Massachusetts Fire Safety Code, heavily regulates these, so we'll be, it has some teeth with our code. Just if there is a problem, we can follow up with that.
Okay.
That's about it.
All right.
Questions?
No, thank you.
All right, seems like Jim is all set. There's a lot of information tonight, and as I mentioned, this is not, the select board does not have to provide a public hearing for a lodging license, but I would like to give the opportunity for 2 or 3 neighbors to come up and speak. If you could keep your comments to 2 minutes, if anyone would like to come forward to the mic and introduce themselves. If you could go to the mic and just introduce yourselves.
My name is Jean St. George, and I live on Diamond Street. I was told that in the limited manufacturing area, when they had businesses in the building, that they could not have people living there. That's what I was told yesterday.
Jim Crowley, I'm going to ask that you come up and address that again.
I'm told with that.
Yeah, so the zoning is limited manufacturing. Residential, as in an apartment building where it's individual apartments, cannot be done. The apartment that is there was licensed in '97 by the zoning board, but a lodging house falls under our LM district, which is allowed by right in the limited manufacturing area. It's not allowed in a residential area unless you reduce the numbers. And again, that'd be through a special permit, but LM is allowed as of right.
And that's with that over more than 4?
4+ units, yeah.
Okay.
The other question is, who is going to protect the neighborhood in case something goes wrong? Now, I've written a letter of all that happened years ago on the street. Don't want a repeat of that. Now, it's a wooded area next to this building. How do you protect us if something goes wrong there?
I'll jump in. I mean, I would just say if you have a problem, see a problem, think there's a problem, you call 911 and have the police come out and take a look. So just like that's the same issue for everybody in all the neighborhoods. So
I tried that once a few years ago and was told, we know where they are. So we had to live with it. I just hope it's changed. I just don't think.
How long ago was that?
Early 70s, mid 70s.
Okay, so that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still, I think we should be protected because we've all been through something, and people have upgraded their homes. You know, they've tried to keep it a nice, quiet neighborhood, and we don't want it changed. That's the thing. And if you've lived there long enough, you have this fear that something could go wrong. I mean, right now I have people in a Bay Circuit trail behind me. People are fine. Some people don't know where they're going because they're on the phone and they don't look up. Other people are in there with their dogs off the leash, so we have those problems. But don't want it to go backwards. That's my fear. And if you have just individuals living in a building, it's a little bit different than, say, someone rented an apartment or a house or a condo. You have individuals, and you just don't know how people are going to get along with each other. That's the problem. That's all I care about.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Is there any other neighbors that, residents of Diamond Street that would like to come forward?
Phil Martin, Old Diamond Street, just around the corner. Professionals living in what essentially is a rooming house. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'm a real estate agent, have been for 25 years, and you're talking about professionals coming to live in a property where they get a bedroom and a communal bathroom and a communal living area. No, that's not going to happen. This is a rooming house. Rooming houses lower the value of all properties around them. There is a reason for it. They do not have a good reputation, and using the two that are in Walpole as your measure for how good rooming houses are, it's not a very big group to look at. Do it over the whole state, and you're probably going to find that the criminal activity is a lot higher. Mr. Yaba has also said that he will be doing 1-year leases. In a rooming house, that's not the norm. And once you okay something, he can do whatever he wants. And rooming houses are normally done on a 1-month basis, sometimes on a weekly basis. You've also said that this is not in a school district. You really think, because from that building, I can throw a stone into the play area of where those children are playing, and I can't throw that far. So it's right there. And just almost across the road, you also have elderly housing, really easy people to pick on. And, I don't know what you can do with the property, but there's a lot of us who really do not like the idea of a rooming house that is going to bring in people who basically don't have any money. Because if they did, they're not going to be living in a rooming house above a manufacturing facility. They just aren't. And having parking across the road, yeah, professionals are really going to like that. No.
This lodging license is an annual license for the select board. So each year it would be coming forward from the select board for renewal.
Yeah. That's very nice, and I'm sure you guys will do the best you can. But once it's there, we all know it's really hard to get rid of it. Especially if he hasn't broken laws, just people who live in his property have broken laws or done things that we really don't want done. It's just my opinion.
No,
I'm a real estate agent.
I appreciate all the neighbors coming here, and I appreciate the letters that are written. It really is has an impact for the board as we work through this and get all the information we need for what a lodging license entails.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other neighbors or members of residents of the? Yeah, and then Anthony, well, I'm going to let this last resident of the area, and then I'll have you come after. I'm going to let him speak, and Anthony, I'll call you back up again one last time.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you all. My name's Kyle Forte. I live on Diamond. Yeah, I just wanted to. I'm not going to reiterate anything that was in the letters, but it sounds like this is on its way to being approved. I heard the word right, and I think for us, I'm kind of sitting here saying, okay, it's basically on its way. I think that it's tough because our section of the town, like Diamond and Old Diamond, gets very little attention from the town. The street is awful. I don't know if you've been around the area, but it's pretty bad on the tires. The lights are totally out all around the street. And now we're about to say, okay, there's somebody who wants to do business in the town, and economic development's great. I work with government day to day at Amazon. It's great. We want to bring business here, right? But I think that it's just, it doesn't sit well with myself, and doesn't, more than what's here today, just to know that we've been sitting here asking for a little bit more development because, I make a lot of money as a 30-year-old. I chose to live here for a family. Blessed Sacrament, it is a school zone. It's crazy to say that it's not. Whether it's not technically, it's definitely, if you just walk around, you'll see. But, it's been very neglected. And now we're about to bring something in that's going to kind of bring the scale a little bit over, even more towards, okay, similar to what my neighbor said. There are a lot of statistics to say what comes with these, and to ignore it, I think would it's just I don't think it would be that smart because we're already kind of in a rough spot right now with people who care about the neighborhood. You just drive around, you'll see everybody outside working on their yards and trying to increase home values, and we get neglected. So if this does pass, it's more of a, hey, it looks like this is going to pass. It'd be great to see a little bit more interest in raising up the people who are actually investing in the community and from a residential standpoint. So that's all I can say.
Absolutely.
So Kyle, and I listened to you at the ZBA meeting in June as well. I appreciate you coming here today. And so I do think some of your comments about the condition of your neighborhood, I'm glad you're saying it to us, because that's part of our purview as well, and the DPW director's in the back, and he is hearing you as well. You could probably just reach out to him with an email or a phone call too, and reiterate some of your concerns, and he probably already knows about them, but you reaching out wouldn't hurt.
Sure.
So I would do that. That's sort of different than what we're talking about tonight, but it's still important, and we appreciate that. I guess my other comment is, you said it's on the path to being approved, but these things go, in my opinion, one of three ways, right? We do approve licenses, oftentimes, if the conditions make sense, and we do deny them on occasion, and I think more often than not, we approve them with conditions, right? So if the neighbors have, if you kind of come up here and say, well, absolutely not, we're dead set against it, that might work. But also, I think it might work better if you come up here and said, well, we're not big fans of this project, but it would be better if. And I mean, I mentioned the parking lot and adding some more grass. That's a small thing that might not alleviate a lot of the concerns, but it's an improvement upon, sort of what's being, proposed. So if you or anyone else here has sort of suggestions on ways this project could work, I think that's what we're always trying to do. We're always trying to let people use their property and improve the area. But also we want to take into consideration, the neighbors. So if you have any ideas on possible improvements, I would want to hear those.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I would say, I guess my approach is what you just said, where it's like, hey, if this does get approved, it would be great to see a little bit more investment with, because it does affect the overall area. Yeah, I think that definitely helps. Appreciate it.
That came across.
Thanks.
Hey, I would just jump in with one more thing. I think you mentioned some of the streetlights are out. The town does now own the streetlights. We did buy those from.
All of them were replaced last year, so I actually am checking with a few people as we speak, and we don't have any reportages of any streetlights out on that street. We're on it, we're gonna check tonight.
Yeah, let us know right away if.
Same with the road.
I think we've made about a couple dozen calls, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So we'll
it's pretty,
check that, and we're on it.
it's like pitch black down there with everybody has a dog.
That's
and-
fair.
That's all I wanted to say is,
Yeah.
we own them, so reach right out to us.
Yeah, well, I appreciate working with us and taking it all into consideration.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Anthony, I think you had one more comment that you wanted to make.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say was each room has its own bathroom, so it's not one big shared bathroom. This is a little bit more unique of a lodge. So every room has its own, and they're not, they're upscale bathrooms too. So I mean, if there's 5 rooms, there's 5 bathrooms in that lodge for each one of the tenants. So that's why the cost is going to be a little bit more.
And thank you. And as we wrap this up, I think there's been a lot of questions and concerns as we move forward. So at this point, would be seeking for an extension into the next meeting of August 1st, I believe is our next meeting, and that we can kind of work on some of these concerns that have been addressed and put them in writing, as far as parking, lighting. I think security was mentioned for the rooms by Deputy Kilroy. Mentioning of green abutters. I think I mentioned the parking lot spots being more designated, so the other areas.
If anything else comes up from the residents, I'd like to hear it, but
Yes.
sure.
Yep. Upkeeping of the exterior property as well as the interior as the common areas, and so what type of contracts and things like that. I think we'd like to see more of those items in writing, and that I would propose that we extend this until the August 1st meeting.
Only one question I have is, so I'm trying to develop it into a lodge. So are you saying that this is something that you could possibly deny because there's money being invested into it as a lodge? There's inspections that we're having, that we have scheduled as a lodge. It kind of leaves me do I finish this thing? Do I keep moving forward with sheet rock and plaster and finishing these rooms, or am I delayed for a month because I need to know my direction?
And I think for us, there's just a little bit more information I think we would like to collect. I do think that, those first inspection reports are kind of important for us to really know how the process is going. Jim,
Well, I've already had a plumbing and an electrical inspection that has passed. Tomorrow is a building inspection. And then after that, I'm scheduled to insulate and move forward with closing up the walls and tile. I mean, I've got bathrooms I've got to tile, and if I'm being asked to wait another month, that means...
It's 2 weeks.
Okay, or 2
It's
weeks.
So I think some of these items that we're questioning that we'd like to address more in written form with a plan, a plan of action rather than just kind of discussion that we can get it in writing. Jim had a comment that he would like to...
So I think going forward at this point, till tonight, you've always proceeded at your own risk. So do as you just desire to do, proceed at your own risk. Ultimately, we've consulted with town council. This board could decide to deny that if they have certain reasons to deny your request here, and then you have the means to appeal it to whatever you'd like to appeal it to. But ultimately, the board is asking for some more time to review some of the feedback from the neighbors that we just got some of these in this afternoon, review the comments from the department heads, check with our attorneys to see what the options may be, what restrictions they may put in a decision if they determine to allow you to go forward. So proceed at your own risk.
Okay. All right.
Glenn, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table the request and add it to the August 1st agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am a yes, so that is a 4-0 vote. So we will see you again on August 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate the neighbors of Diamond and Old Diamond coming and sending letters, and please forward other items to us, send emails as well.
Would we be willing to meet with the neighbors? Maybe we could,
That's kind of what this was, but...
no,
Yeah.
just meeting with the neighbors, not with anybody else, to talk about it, because all the neighbors are not here, to talk about their concerns, and maybe we would have input, because you're looking for different...
I will kind of confer with the board about your request, and we will see what we can do.
Have you been down to look at the area?
I drove down the street today, and I watched...
I grew up on Hartshorn Road. I used to deliver newspapers to the area. I know the area well.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. At this time, we do need to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is with our town clerk, Liz Gaffney, who has joined us virtually tonight.
Can you hear us, Liz?
Liz, do you...
Okay, yes, I can. Did you want to start with the appointment of the election workers for the upcoming year till next August? Or did you want to start with the Tri-County? I had a few items that I just didn't know in which order you wanted to take them in.
So which order do you want to take?
I figure we were just going to go right in line with starting with the fall warrant article. Do we have that to discuss tonight, too?
So briefly, on my end, Liz and I have talked about this. Initially, I provided a draft to town council. I'm waiting to hear back from her. But after looking at her schedule, the town clerks across the state schedule, she's proposing that if we do move it to a Tuesday, it be the third Tuesday of the month in May, just to keep it consistent with some of the state meetings for town clerks throughout the state. So I don't have a problem in moving it. I randomly just picked the first Tuesday in June. The third Tuesday in May makes sense. The following Tuesday is the long weekend. So if the board, again, I don't have a draft to present to you, but if you're giving me the green light to go ahead and you see no issue with that Tuesday, if that's what we present to town meeting, I'll continue to move forward with that.
Do we have comments from the board? Jim, do you have any comment?
I think the third Tuesday is good. I like moving it to Tuesday, number one. And I I've never been a big fan of the, after Memorial Day election thing we're in. So getting it before Memorial Day, I think makes a lot of sense. So I'm in favor.
Yeah, just briefly, hey Liz, obviously there's going to be some changes as far as the dates leading up to the election with nominations and candidates pulling papers. It's on your end, I have no doubt that that'll be seamless, but there's going to be a communication gap. We need to get the word out, and I'm sure you have some ideas on how to do that. And we don't have to discuss it thoroughly tonight, but I just want to make sure that people don't miss their opportunity to, I'm up for election, for example. I don't want to forget to pull my papers and go and so on with the deadlines.
Right. So I am guided by the state, the Mass General laws, to make sure that the elections are done in a time frame. The calendar of events, starting with the taking out of nomination papers. I run a calendar through the Secretary of State's office, and he approves that. He approves that to me for every year, so I know that the dates will be correct for what we're going to do for the third Tuesday. And as far as educating the voting the voters, we could definitely, I could do either something, a public service announcement to let them know that we're going to change it, but as long as we know that it passes through town meeting and we get it to that point, we'll see where we are time-wise and what year you're talking about doing this. Is it going to be next year with all the other elections? We have to see where you want to be on that timetable, but absolutely, we could, I would definitely do a public service announcement, would definitely put it on the town clerk's page. I could put Buckville in the census form to let you know that we've changed the date, and then it would be obviously on the website.
Okay, thanks for that.
Mark, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving it before Memorial Day, and so I think that's a good thing. I think the date is fine, third Tuesday of May is good.
Okay, so with that, I'll continue to proceed and work with town council in time for a draft for you folks at the end of the month in August. Okay.
And I think we have, we won't take a vote on this.
No, no votes necessary.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Liz. And the second thing tonight is for the polling locations and the election workers and polling locations. I just want to make a quick statement and full disclosure that I do have a family member that is included on the list of election officers, and since we will be voting on the election officers as a block, I will be participating in the vote this evening. But Liz, if you could go over that information for us.
Okay, so the 3 polling locations that we have currently for the state, the federal and the state, it's precincts 1, 2, and 2A would be Old Post Road at the Old Post Road School at 99 Old Post Road. Precincts 3, 4, 5, and 5A would vote at Blackburn Hall, and precincts 6, 7, and 8A would vote at Fisher School. For the town election, we don't have the A's, so precincts 1 and 2 would vote at Old Post Road. Precincts 3, 4, 5 would be at Blackburn Hall, and 6, 7, 8 would be at Fisher School. And we did submit the poll workers' names to both the Democratic Town Committee and Republican Town Committee for their input on them. So I know Eva sent that out, and I didn't hear anything different myself. So if I defer to you to see if they sent anything to you.
No, just what was in what we received.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments from the board? Glenn, do you have a motion?
A motion to appoint the list of election officers and approve the list of polling locations as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
All right, we will do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. We have a vote 4-0-0. And the last thing that we will be talking to Liz tonight is concerning the Tri-County election, and she will be going over how this is sort of a different type of election than we typically have in town.
So this election, we've met, it's going to take place for 11 cities and towns for the Tri-County Regional High School in Franklin. So after a few meetings with the clerks, the decided upon date is for Tuesday, October 24th, and the hours that they voted on are 12 noon to 8 p.m. So they have told us that they're not interested, they don't do it by precinct. It's just, it would be one same ballot all across for the town. So with that, they're asking, do we want to use the same 3 polling locations, or did we want to have 1 polling location? So that's one of the decisions that we can make for us. Because they are the ones who are going to write the warrant and post the warrant only in the town hall. It falls under different election rules under Mass General Law, so we can have it at 1 polling location. They are only expecting a 10% turnout. For me, that would be 1,900 voters. So my thought process on that was, because if it's not going to be precinct oriented, I absolutely could probably hold it in the select board meeting room, right there, the main meeting room, and have that 12 to 8 at the town hall and make that our polling location.
Any questions from board members? Jim, seems that you have a question?
Nothing from me.
Okay. I think that's kind of I think it will be important to advertise to the community about how this is kind of a different election, a special election, that the location will be just 1 location of the town hall main meeting room, and that the hours will be different, that they will be from 12 to 8. I think it will be important that we have the flashers out on the main roads announcing this election, announcing the location for this election and the alternate hours, as well as A-frames in front of the schools that are typical polling locations, such as Old Post Road and Fisher School, to redirect voters that it is here at Town Hall, and that we should, certainly use communication, electronic communication through social media and the resources of the school, of weekly emails, the COA newsletters, and utilizing the new Public Schools app to get that information out about this election, that this is a county election and the rules and how it operates are different. But I'm comfortable with the 1 location of the town main meeting room. So. Len, do I have a motion for
Yeah,
this?
you got it. A motion to set the main meeting room at Town Hall as the polling location for the Tri-County election on October 24th, 2023.
I'll second that.
We'll do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Len?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. The vote is 4-0-0. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Liz.
And I thank you for looking at that. Just some past history. The last time that we did a Tri-County, it was also at the town hall in the old senior center. So, and that proved to work out well. So I will definitely work with the departments involved to help get out the word that that's where it's going to be, and the hours of it, so that we can have a successful election at night. And I thank you for your vote.
All right.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, next item on our agenda tonight is discussion and the possible vote on the accessory dwelling unit bylaw amendment article for the fall warrant. Good evening, Patrick. Thanks for being here this evening. If you could take us through this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, obviously, this proposal was brought back for the recent Springtown meeting, ended up being sent back to committee. Took another look at it, trying to think about more of just clean slate approach. And that's kind of what we did. We kind of the proposal right now is almost to remove what is existing for the in-law suite and go with what the state would determine as a proper defined accessory dwelling unit. With that kind of comes with a revised purpose, definition, consolidation of the use regulations. Our current one was a little bit disjointed, and I felt this one was a little bit more, straightforward. Beyond that, we also kind of increased the administration and enforcement, and I think that was one kind of gray area a little bit with the previous bylaw. In particular, this also is looking at proposing the use as allowed by right within all residential districts, with the caveat, especially for the purpose, the previous in-law suite bylaw was only for third degree of kinship. Wanting to kind of, take into account all the feedback we received the last time, both through the planning board and with select board itself and FinCom. Thought about proposing an additional purpose in order to provide a opportunity for residents age 62 and over in order to age in place or have a senior housing option. So this allows that accessory dwelling unit to not just be utilized for those within a third-degree kinship, but also those that are above the age of 62. And so that allowed us to just open it up to be more than one use. The state, usually how they define accessory dwelling unit, they, in particular, it's mostly 2 points of egress, as well as the principal, the unit can be no larger than 900 square feet. The state does also allow you to kind of make some sort of adjustments based upon owner occupancy, whether it can be used for short-term rental. So there's some sort of wiggle room in terms of how you want to regulate who can occupy the accessory dwelling unit. So you can go as restrictive as, third-degree kinship, or you could be as open as you want in terms of just allow, the accessory dwelling unit to be occupied by anyone. So this was kind of that middle ground approach of trying to just take into account the feedback received last time. So I'm happy to go through any section if the board has questions.
Open up to the board. Does anyone have questions on this revised, or I shouldn't say revised, but new option?
So previously, the zoning board of appeals was the board that oversaw these?
Correct.
Okay, and that'll be in the select board's hands now?
No, it would be allowed by right. So it would.
Okay.
Yep. So it would go through traditional process of filing for a building permit, provided it meets the regulations described within the bylaw.
Okay.
Jim, do you have any questions or comments to make on this?
Yeah, on the kinship, could you just go back through that again?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't quite sure I followed you, because it sounded like there's sort of a range of options, third degree all the way to anybody. And how is it, where are we fitting in that continuum?
So the kinship option is still in play. So in terms of occupancy of the accessory dwelling unit, you're allowed to, I keep on referencing, we're allowed to, this is kind of taking the approach that the state made changes when it comes to Mass General Law, both within the definition section as well as in Section 5 dealing with amendments to zoning bylaws. So this is kind of a regional thing as well as just statewide. A lot of towns are taking a closer look at accessory dwelling units as a alternative housing type. Obviously, that gets, either, goes with flying colors through any other town or some other towns, but some towns can also place more restrictions in terms of, well, we don't want to have it be open-ended. We'd like to have some sort of, control and not just have it be, not lose the character of a single-family residential district, so to speak, and not have units become two families. So take into account that we had an in-law suite bylaw that was existing, and that seemed to be working well in terms of the demand, in terms of the need. Wanted to keep that as well as a restriction for this new, accessory dwelling unit bylaw, but also take into account that there was some feedback of, well, what defines a family? What happens to the unit after the occupant is no longer there? The other option was to also look into placing a restriction in terms of you could have the unit be available for those that are 62 or older. So almost like an age in place or a senior housing option. And so that's a certain restriction that allows a little more flexibility for those that do have an accessory dwelling unit as well, to make use of that unit beyond kinship.
But that, what you've just done is lay out the options.
Correct.
I guess my question is, if we go forward with this in the fall town meeting, we're going to have very specific language in there. And how are we going to decide what that specific language is? Is it going to be as rigid as it was last time around? Or is it going to be somewhere along that, that less rigid definition, as you just said? And how are we going to decide that?
By definition, you're talking about with kinship? Or?
Yeah, if it was in the fall, it was third degree kinship. You're right, a lot of the feedback was it should be broader than that, because if, my aunt moves in with me and then passes away, and now I've got this dwelling unit, I might want to rent it out to someone else who's a friend. And under the way the bylaw was written, my understanding was that wouldn't be allowed. I think what you're saying here is we haven't figured out that language yet for what we're gonna propose for the fall. Is that right?
No, so I think my approach with it was kind of like a middle ground approach. We could certainly take language that has been utilized elsewhere in order to open up the use for, you know, non-restricted by age, non-restricted by kinship, and just have it as accessory dwelling unit as a alternative housing type. My proposal, at least, you know, at the moment to the select board is just, you know, more or less a halfway measure in terms of, well, you know, we understand that kinship is what we have, you know, currently with the in-law suite, but providing that second option of allowing the accessory dwelling unit to be utilized for those individuals that are 62 or older, it creates an opportunity for those that, you know, to either age in place, but have an alternative housing option for senior citizens. And so that's an example that we took from a few other towns, just personally, that looked at how other towns kind of structured their regulation for occupancy. And so rather than open it up open-ended, it allows just kind of an alternative occupancy type beyond in-law.
Hey, Jim, let me jump in real quick. The latest update does say third degree of kinship or somebody over 62. So it's now got two parts instead of just one, so.
And so, right, I can see that, but are those the words that we're recommending, I guess is my question? Or, because I don't think those words address all the feedback that we got in last time around.
My secondary question, kind of follow-up to that, is if this goes through town meeting, it requires a 50% vote?
Correct.
Right.
So,
And then so right now we have it as kinship, and then for an individual over 62 plus. What would be required if, say, this passes, and 5 years from now, we say, okay, that's not wide enough of a purview for a occupancy allowance? How would we then go back, adjust that kind of specific piece?
We'd have to do an amendment to it. Yeah, and go back because it's it'll be part of the zoning bylaws.
Okay. Jim, are you seeking to expand the definition for who could live within this auxiliary dwelling unit?
Because to Patrick's point, we got a lot of feedback that the third degree kinship aspect, which is the way it was written last time, wasn't wide enough. I'm not sure just by adding over 62 addresses that broader question. And so that's what I'm trying to understand is how are we going to land the language? I know what Patrick is proposing, but it doesn't address all the questions that came up as we went through the process last time. And so what I'm trying to figure out here is, you know, how are we going to get to final language?
Are you suggesting that we eliminate the degree of kinship? Jim?
So
I'm not sure.
I see what you're saying, Jim, in terms of, you know, we got a lot of feedback. Is this the right composition? Do people want to remove regulation in terms of kinship or age qualifying? Is this being too restrictive to the feedback we got? Do we want to open it up? And truthfully, that's an excellent point. I mean, that's something that I think most towns that are trying to amend or create the zoning are trying to take into account. In terms of really gauging if you want to make this less restrictive, I mean, my only thing with it would be to try to have, you know, public outreach, try to have some sort of workshop to address it as an issue and try to gauge what we get from those that are in attendance. I mean, that'd probably be the most transparent way of doing it.
Removed 62 and kinship, and a lot of people to, I mean, so are there
Oh, yeah.
concerns? Do you have concerns, or does?
You're essentially creating.
Yeah, I have concerns with that.
I'm
I
creating
think
what?
this is that fine balance between we're
Right.
creating the
Okay.
opportunity for rental units and two-family units throughout town, because there can be two bedrooms. I mean, I think at the initial in-law, I brought up, you know, an au pair, where a family has hired an au pair to live at their house. Having an auxiliary, you know, dwelling unit would be a great thing if you wanted to have an au pair.
Yeah.
That they would have a space to leave. It would still not be allowed under what is written now. So I hear what you're saying, Jim, we're like, is this too restrictive? Can we open it up? If we open it too much, and Jim Crowley, you certainly could come up and speak to this, I think we're creating a scenario where we've now allowed for rental properties throughout town as of right.
So the goal of this,
If they have the, the land.
if I may, the goal of this is to make it easier to build these additions, not to make it harder. So if the goal is to make it easier, but not too easy, so we either have to do this with some restrictions or do it with no restrictions, and now it's too easy. So, and if we don't do this, then it's not easy enough. So I think this is a middle ground, and I'm okay with it, I guess is what I'm saying.
One of the things I'd also kind of want to add to this, and I mean, apart from the owner occupancy or the occupancy type, something that was also added had to deal with notarization of occupancy. And so this is another recommendation kind of took from a few other towns in terms of the owner needs to occupy the dwelling, whether it's primary or not, and then it needs to have notarization submitted with their application to the building department. And so, before someone could apply to the zoning board and say, "Yep, yeah, my mother's living there." There's nothing to say that's 100% truthful. So this is something that I think having that notarization in there also adds another layer of protection for that use.
Can I ask Jim O'Neill a question then?
Absolutely.
So Jim, just, the goal of this again is to make it easier to build these accessory dwellings, which I think it does. And do you have a suggestion to, is it too restrictive in your mind, or does it accomplish what we're seeking to accomplish?
Again, I'm not sure, Glenn. I struggle with this just like everybody else does, because what we're not trying to do here is just open up the floodgates and allow rental units all around town. But I do know the feedback we got, and some of the feedback was, when I have that relative living in there, and the relative is no longer living there for whatever reason, now I've spent money on this unit, and I can't really do anything with it. I can live by myself. I can move in there and you have an office or a game room or whatever I'm going to turn it into, but I can't re-rent it out. And that was a problem for some people. And so, what I think those people would say is they'd like to have probably no definition on it and, allow people to just rent it to whoever they want to rent to and define family however they want to define it. So I think that's probably where those, the people that would take the widest view on this would be. From where I sit, I don't know that that's the right answer, but I can't get my head wrapped around anything else that then makes it, I don't know how you make it more restrictive without basically being exclusive, right? Yeah. You say, okay, well, I can have family members or I can have somebody over 62. Well, that means I'm excluding everyone else. And that, so anytime you put any kind of guardrails around it, that's what's going to happen. And yet, I'm not sure myself whether the thing should be wide open. So this is why I'm raising it, because I know what it says currently, and I'm not convinced it's going to address the questions that we got. And really, the question I have is, I don't know that I know the answer, but I know that there's a question, and I think we need to take the question on. Does that make sense?
Jim, would you be comfortable even dropping it to like a 55 plus?
Maybe. I think what I really want to do is get some input from like I forget what we call them, but the people who did the housing production plan.
Housing partnership.
Maybe get some input from them, and maybe get some input from from other community members, and see what other people think, because otherwise I just fear we're going to end up right back in the same box that we ended up in last fall, in the spring. Sorry.
I also have Jim Crowley here, and I think he was going to speak to it too, just for the as we talk about restrictions and how you see that sort of as the building and not leaving it too open, so that we've created two families throughout town.
Yeah, so the ADU basically through the state is designed for two-family homes, basically. We are allowed as a right to, as Patrick has done here, rewrite zoning to accommodate the ADU. I think, well, Patrick speaks to that, but I think the reason he's moving for the ADU is last time we done this, we want to do it as of right. 50% of people didn't want it. They wanted it as a special permit. Then we went for special permit, and then they wanted it as of right. It was like, it is a 50-50. And by bringing in the ADU sign of it, it does bring it to a 50-50 vote, which should be more to what everybody was talking back and forth about. The reason we keep the kinship honestly in there, so a third kind of kinship is grandmother or grandaunt, granduncle, first cousin. It goes down there. I do see Jim's point of where do we draw the line. It is a tough one. But at the same time, if you do allow it to be rented, now you have created two-family homes everywhere, where if a neighbour has bought in a single-family district and wants a single-family home, they can't do that anymore, because if your two neighbours on each side or across the road decide to add ADUs and rent them out to anybody, you basically wiped out single-family homes. And that's where we're trying to get that balancing act of where do you not cause that you can buy a single-family home in a single-family neighbourhood. Yes, you can get an ADU, or at the moment an in-law, which is a specific use that you're using. That's the kind of balancing act we're trying to get to. It's a tough one. And I think that's why Patrick's going for the ADU, is once that goes to town meeting, it's a 50-50 vote rather than a 75% yes vote. And that's why he's going, I'm assuming this way, we're going this way, because it was so 50-50 last time.
So I have two follow-up questions. So after an ADU is, permitted, built and things like that, what is then the ownership of the owner besides that initial kind of occupancy notarization for future use? You could start and have your mother-in-law live in there, but then what happens in the future? Because that's not an annual thing that they're coming and notarizing and stating that, correct?
Within the proposal, yeah.
It's not.
It's
Not
not.
an annual thing.
It's not annual, that they would come forward to you?
No, we do actually have a proposal in the administration section of the bylaw. So the owner of the property shall certify annually at the time of sale or in change of occupancy to the building department. Department that accessory dwelling unit and primary residence are being used in accordance with the provision. Use must cease within 90 days if out of compliance. The zoning enforcement officer shall be permitted to access the property to verify certification. So the owner of the property shall certify annually or at the time of sale that it's still being occupied.
Okay.
So that's something that wasn't included within the existing in-law, so this is another element of trying to
So
regulate.
if someone had it in the neighborhood and they started renting it out to anyone, neighbors could say, call in and say, this is not being rented to someone who's of 62, 55 plus, whatever we, kind of go forward with. It is not a relative that I know of. That would be something. How are towns handling it for any sort of, and then again, this kind of gets, I feel like, to that special permit, any unusual circumstance? Where Jim said, how do people define their family? Which I think is a harder kind of thing. Or any other towns finding that, dealing with that, writing it in the ADU language?
No, so from what we've dealt with on ADUs and in-laws, on the enforcement side of it, every town's been different. Some towns are even more stringent than even this that we are, where they actually make the family members sign a contract that they're basically, it's a lease just without paying, and they have to renew that every year, and that's documented. And if they don't renew it every year, the enforcement agency, basically the building department, go out and inquire if you want to go that way. If we decided to add that they had to renew every year, again, right now we have the in-laws, and as one of the FinCom members stated, you have to say you have an in-law, and then you only have to report it if you sell the property. One of the FinCom members stated that she knew 6 in-laws in town that were being used as rental property. Right now, unless we're notified, we're not going to find out. If this clause comes in, we can set it up on our system the very same as a 3 or 4 or 110 inspection, where every year they get a notification to renew. And we'll take them, again, it's a catch-22. We're going to take them at the word. I'm not going to go kicking someone's door in or calling them a liar that their family's not living there. But they have to, under this, they would have to renew every year. Every town is tweaking it to their own specifications, because that's the kind of advantage of an ADU. If you want to go through it and get it through at 50% of the vote, is you can custom it to your town specifically. You keep some of the main criteria, like the 900 square feet, that's an end cap from the state. It has been 900 square feet, no more. So some things are end cap, other things you can adjust and custom to your home.
So, I mean, a good example of that is the addition of the notarization section. So within our bylaw, the property owner must occupy the residence as their primary dwelling. And so this is an example we kind of picked and choose from a few of the towns. Having that notarization, that unit, or that dwelling is the owner's primary dwelling. That's another, I guess, form of trying to make sure that the property doesn't become a two-family, so to speak, that the owner will occupy the primary dwelling. But to Jim's point, yeah, the annual inspection, that's not something we have currently. And so having that addition in there is just another point of really kind of, quality control, making sure that the unit is being used for the intent and purpose that's within the bylaw.
So could I jump in for a second? So the intent and the immediate intent is to allow for an accessory dwelling unit, or an in-law suite as we were calling it, to be put in place so that I could have, a relative who qualified live in the house and do that under the bylaw. And that was the purpose of it. So now when we start thinking about what's the problem with that, the problem is I go spend $100,000 in my house building out, this living unit, and then after a period of time, the in-law leaves for whatever reason. Now I've got this unit that I've built out that I can use as part of my house, and I've improved the value of my house because of the work I've done to it. But I can't get the full value out of the unit because it was built so someone could live in it. I'm not in favor of creating two-family housing across all of the zones in Walpole. That's creating a whole other problem, and it is not addressing the basic problem. So maybe there's some place in the middle where you say you apply for one of these in-law suites, or you don't have to, you get it by right because that's the way this is written, but the in-law has to live there for a certain period of time, and if the in-law lives there for a certain period of time, now the person can recoup the investment by renting it out to someone who's not a relative. But the person next door can't just go and build out another unit for purposes of renting it out. So you have to start with the original premise, which is I'm solving the in-law problem, the relative problem. And yet I'm creating another problem when I do that because I can't use the facility that I've built and spent a lot of money on once the in-law is gone. What we don't want to do is create a third problem, which is everybody is adding a rental unit to their house to rent out to anybody. So I'm not saying that, but what I'm wondering is there some way to figure out how to allow the person who has done the right thing by having an in-law there for a certain period of time, and then let them be able to continue to use the unit, because they spent the money on it. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if it's enforceable, but it addresses the problem that was being asked in my mind. Does that make sense?
That resonates with me, to say to the rest of the board. I think it's a good idea, Jim. And, I think we're improving things with these proposed changes, by making it by right, by adding the 62 plus. I think that's opening it up a little bit. And then creating a sort of a deadline, whether it's 10 years or whatever the number is. I don't love the idea. I think the things that aren't good about this are the annual certification in perpetuity. That seems like a lot of policing forever, and it's an opportunity for people to skirt the law and to sort of mislead the town, and the town to always be sort of knocking on doors, which I don't think you want to do, and I don't think I want to put us in that position. So I don't love the annual certification, at least not in perpetuity. So I do like the creating a sort of a deadline for when you'll commit to using it for 62 plus, or somebody of blood relation for a certain amount of time. It sounds like you want to say something.
Yeah, no. So in terms of the time restriction, so say we have it's 20 years or something like that. After 20 years, so the unit can always be used as part of the home. That's, you
Yeah, of
know,
course.
but in terms of use, are you saying that the unit can now be rented out after the time restriction?
It's unsaid. I think this is unsaid what happens.
You were
after.
telling us, that's
Yeah.
what, we're bringing this draft forward to the board. And back in the fall, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Pat, we got a lot of feedback. It was like, we were back and forth with this board, then the finance committee said, we'll take it back to the select board. The ZBA weighed in that they weren't happy, that they weren't part of the process. And we're just trying to take all those comments in, and, you know, Glenn, getting to your point, that was the part E here, the certification. That was part of the feedback that we received, but ultimately, your board's sponsoring it.
It doesn't sit well with me. is all I'm saying.
If that's what the board wants to do, we'll take it out. And this is why we're coming before you now in July, so we can work on the next few weeks to give you a draft and say, okay, we took your feedback. Are you comfortable with, you know, having a person utilize the property in, you know, accordance with how this is written, and if and when it gets to that point, 10 years afterwards, they are allowed to rent it without these stipulations. You guys are telling us.
And I think the initial certification and the notarized certification initially makes sense. It's just the annual, come back and tell us again what's going on, not so much.
See, I appreciate the annual in there because I think it is keeping tabs if this does not become.
I know it's keeping tabs. I'm saying I think it's a good thing. I'm saying.
Because I think it can be open to then creating the two families across town and
Of course
all
it can,
zoning.
but, I mean,
It can, and this is where and part of this is that it only needs 50% rather than the 2/3 vote, which was the previous item that we were talking about earlier in the year. And I think there's that balance. I don't think the feedback said, let's make two families across town and
No,
not have
I
any
agree.
restrictions, not have any kind of data or ownership of it. I think it's a great thing that the owner has to occupy the primary building. I think it could be dropped to 55 plus. I think that kind of expands the senior housing option, and I think that's a good thing. I do think that there's that, how do you define family? And that was the feedback that Jim O'Neill is alluding to, is how do you define family and how can we add that flexibility without opening it up? Like I said, an au pair, so someone who's employed by the family, they're not kinship, but they are employed by the family. I think an au pair should be able to live in an auxiliary dwelling unit, and I think we're close, but I think we need we need to kind of come together, seek out the housing partnership opinion on this as well, and kind of, I think we can fine tune it a little bit more.
Absolutely.
I would just say that I'm against the idea of a accessory dwelling unit becoming a two-family. So I don't like that automatic conversion, so, for what that's worth.
All right, so I guess what I'm trying to gather, so there might be a third option within the purpose. So obviously, we don't want everything to turn into a two-family. We don't want someone to just be able to build a unit and have it rented out right away, unrestricted. At the same time, how do we define family? What happens to that unit? What if we don't, have a family member that can live there, or we don't have an individual over 62 or 55 that can live there? How does that get used? I think that maybe for next time I could try to find a little research in terms of what's that next step, I guess, in terms of having a additional purpose that is still restricted in the sense that it maintains the character of a single-family home. Because that's ultimately what the purpose is for the ADU, is that it maintains the appearance and function of a single-family home with that accessory function as a dwelling unit, or accessory dwelling unit function, available, but it's not, definitely don't want it to become a two-family outright. So there's something there. I think I'll just have to kind of take another look as maybe like a third option within the purpose section, like SC, that kind of maybe meets where we're heading.
Hey, Jim, how much time do we have to play with language? Like, when do we need?
Well, so we need a draft. We actually need to get it up to the planning board eventually.
Yes, but the Moore Integrity doesn't close until the 22nd.
So we don't close to the 22nd, so.
It's just timing.
22nd of August?
Yeah, but we need that because the fall timeframe is so tight.
So it sounds like we should try to get this on the agenda pretty quickly.
I mean, we may
And then
not.
alert people who had opinions the first time around to come on in and
have a discussion about it.
65 days that the planning board have to open their hearing once I bring the draft, you guys vote and I bring the draft to them. So either when the warrant closes or if you guys were to vote on August 1st to sponsor this, then on August 2nd, I can notice the planning board and their clock starts. Their 65-day clock starts. It's like when we get later down and we're like, it's after the 22nd, I'm not sure when, you're very close to town meeting. In order
Very
for them
close,
to
and there's been times where I've gotten complaints, we're having a public hearing on Thursday night, the same night as FinCom has a public
And
hearing.
I do
That's
not
tough.
wanna
So I would
that.
say, if the board can direct us, so tell us by the next meeting, okay, we'll inform the housing partnership people there, give them a draft by tomorrow, here's what we have for a draft, sorry for the short notice, you have a week and a half to get back to us, you're invited to come and participate in the select board meeting on the 1st. We really, the first is, we really, yeah. That's
I
right.
would like the feedback. I think that would be very helpful.
And Patrick, I hope we've given you enough tonight to maybe do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
And bring that to us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hear what everyone's saying. Generally, I think more the issue is with, so I guess does anyone have an issue with it being allowed by right? Does anyone have an issue with the definition? The definition is kind of dictated by Mass General law.
The notes I'm taking, Pat, is we'd like to see it lowered.
Okay.
Ally, you've said a couple times 55. We can lower it to 55. I guess I'm looking for some feedback tonight. You okay with 55 board members for now?
Sure.
Okay. Ally, you mentioned living.
That gives me the annual certification. I'll give it 55.
Providing living space for, I just typed in what's the definition of an au pair. So someone who works within the family, has a relationship, or somehow, we'll work on the details of that. You're looking for something along those lines, right?
I think so, and that may address what Jim O'Neill, if we can kind of find that definition of someone, employed, working with the family, kind of that definition. This is Aunt Meg. She may not be kinship, but is a close person of the family that they would want to rent, have occupy their accessible building unit.
We may want to consider also like a live-in healthcare kind of a person for somebody in ill health, but it's going to be along, that sort of falls
Right.
along.
So employed with the family.
Yeah.
Or as considered close relationship, and I don't know if we can have a definition for a close relationship that is non-kinship. I'm assuming other towns have kind of gone through these kind of definitions as well, trying to not open it all the way up, but keep it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the employee one can definitely be added. The close kinship one, I'll have to take it. I mean, a close relationship.
Yeah, I know.
To me, it is kind of, it is close to just saying, well, it's open-ended.
And that could be abused.
Yep.
It could be, but just opening up definitely could be abused to two families
Yep.
without any kind of parameters.
So we can think about, employee, I'm thinking, well, they can document it by showing some type of form of payment in some way or another. I work for the family, I care for the kids, and I get, I don't know, $500 a week.
And then Jim had the kind of idea of like 10 years of meeting provision B, then have more flexibility.
And maybe that's too hard to do, and maybe that's something for down the road. And if it is going to become an impediment to getting something that's better than we currently have passed, and we could drop that. I was just trying to think about the question about recouping investment. And if the real answer is, look, you invest the money for the in-law suite or the au pair or the healthcare provider, and you're doing that with the knowledge that that you no longer have that person, you can't just rent it back out. I guess I'd be okay with that, but I do get the point that someone spends a lot of money and then can't recoup the investment.
Glenn, would you be like a biannual?
Yeah, I mean, that would be an improvement, sure, I mean.
Twice as good.
I was gonna say 2 or 5 year certification, but.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's Mark and Jim, and Ben's not here, so I guess I don't want to be the only one with that opinion. If it's just me, then we can move on, but, yeah, let's have the discussion. I think that's the open-ended question right now, because you and I have different ideas on that.
Okay.
And the other thing that's on my mind on this is, we took we agreed to sponsor this article at the request of, I think it was the zoning board. And then we got all balled up because we agreed to sponsor it, but then as the sponsors, we owned the pen as well. And people got all charged up because we changed some of the language. So one of the things that I want to make sure of this time around is if we're going to sponsor it, then I wouldn't expect that there's going to be a lot of that kind of noise. And if it's better to have the planning board sponsor it, then because that's the way we actually generally do this, then, I don't have any, at least from where I sit, it doesn't matter to me whether the select board sponsors it or not. So, I'd be happy to push it back to the planning board if that, makes a difference and helps us get the thing done.
All right, so we will come forward and address this again on the August 1st meeting.
Yeah, if the board's comfortable with it, we'll go forward. If you want to kick it to the planning board, I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but we can kick it. Yeah.
It may not, but again, it isn't normal what we're doing here with the zoning article, and it did seem to cause a lot of, fear and loathing as we went through the process last year.
I mean, and the only thing I mentioned, I did initially want to bring changes to the planning board and was told to go to zoning, and then.
I'd like to
So-
see this, come forward and be ready for the fall meeting. I think there was interest in it, and I think it's going to intend, so I think that's something we can talk about August 1st as we clean up that language, but I'm comfortable with the select board still sponsoring it, and I think we can kind of finish that up at the next meeting.
Okay, I agree.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for all your work on this. It is now 8:46, about an hour after our original time for open forum. But if anyone is here to speak at our open forum, I welcome you to the podium.
Bill Hamilton, Precinct 5. I'm here to request that the Select Board hire the environmental law firm of McGregor, Legea, and Stevens. And the reason I'm requesting that is we know that the Woods report on hydrology has given us all the information we need to know that we have a really severe situation with those plumes of pollution that they're reporting on under Bird Machine. Those plumes of pollution, if they become mobile, and there's an opportunity that they might, and if they go to the School Meadow Brook, we have no other water resource other than Mine Brook, which is only 1 million gallons a day. So we would lose 2.5 million gallons a day, and the only place that right now that we could go to recover that would be the MWRA, because the preserve was built on our future well field. Now, what I would like to see happen is the sludge site be taken by eminent domain because it pays taxes and it's private property. Now, Legea and Stevens and our environmental lawyers, they could help us do that with the reservoir. They could provide the expertise and they could provide recommendations for candidates for hydrologists that could help. Now, the sludge site has already been permitted by the DEP and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So it has all the permits to be built as a sludge site, which are very comparable to a reservoir. And we need a reservoir. And we would have probably 4 million gallons a day out of that reservoir because it's right with Stop River. And we would use 2.5, and we could sell the other 1.5 million gallons to the prison complex or we'd give it to the prison complex and to rent them in Norfolk. So and the door may close because the MWRA has 2 available paths to bring sewer to that sludge site. One is through the fields has sewer, the Walpole Prison abuts it, they can by right hook up to the sewer. The sludge site abuts the Walpole Prison, by right, they can hook up to it then. There's another possibility, Sewer and Water Commissioner Bill Abbott has expressed a desire to have the sewer move up 1A, 1.1 miles to the situation at where the MWRA, if it moved up that far at Industrial Road, could move the sewer across the street into the junkyards where they already have an easement up to their sludge site and to the Walpole prison the prison complex, which needs sewer also, and the connection for the sewer is very close to each other at that site. And the Charles River Watershed is complaining that the the prison complex is polluting their headwaters of the Charles River Watershed. So there'll be a lot of people supporting having a sewer go to the sludge dump. So I would hope that you would engage with the law firm and take that reservoir, take that sludge site to build a reservoir, because we need an alternate source of water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Any comments from the board? Okay. Moving on to, we now address new business. So our first item is the site host agreement for commercial electric vehicle charging program with Eversource Energy at the Walpole Public Library. I think we have our Library Director Sal here to speak on this matter.
Salvatore Genovese, Director of the Walpole Public Library. About a year ago, the trustees were interested in putting electric vehicle charging stations, excuse me, on the library property. So we had a proposal from Commonwealth Electrical in April of '22, as a matter of fact, and through that proposal, we were able to secure some funding from Eversource and from the state to pay approximately 95% of the cost of the charging stations. The site agreement that you guys would approve would allow for basically the continuation of this project. They could start scheduling and get the charging stations put at the library parking lot. I don't know if you had any questions or.
I think there was a few questions that we had. I think it's a great idea. I think it continues to move our community towards a greener community and in line with the build of the library as being a green certified building. I think there was concerns of questions of the charging, the amounts, the access to it in case of weather and things of how it's written in the contract, and the data. And have all those items been addressed?
From my perspective, I believe Jim and I have talked over the weekend. He was comfortable with those responses. Specifically, one of Jim's questions was, well, the funding sources on this one. I will tell you, we were certified, was it LEED Gold or Silver?
Yes.
Yeah. Back when this project was approved, it was 2012.
Yeah,
I looked it up during this discussion. So some time ago, and we can only use those funds specifically on the library. Sal and I have talked about this. Eventually, we're going to need to do some work on the solar panels on the roof, and that's probably what we'll use the majority of those funds for. But with this $3,000 that's required, that's where we're proposing to take that fund. The data that's being shared there, that's in the agreement, the companies responded to us. I was satisfied with the response. I think Jim was too. So those were the few questions that
So when someone goes and utilizes these parking spots and starts charging their car, do they pay a fee to charge the car?
Yes,
okay.
we would, it's a part of the ChargePoint network, and so we would set the fee for the usage of the electricity. So the idea would be to put a price point in which obviously would pay for the electric that's being used and any other kind of costs that are associated with the charging stations. We could also charge a little bit more and reserve some of that funds to be used for the library as well.
And so this could possibly also be a revenue maker for.
Potentially.
for the
Yeah,
library?
potentially.
It's expected it'll eventually turn into one.
Yeah. My suggestion would be like for the first year, probably not to touch anything, just to see where the costs are so we can start projecting as we go forward.
Any other questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think it's a great project, and
Thank you.
glad you brought it forward.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, trustees, too, yeah.
Jim, are you satisfied with all the information?
Yeah, as Jim said, Ian and I talked, and so all of my questions have been answered, so I feel good, Ally.
Okay, great. Glenn? do you
I
have a
make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign site host agreement for commercial electric vehicle charging program with Eversource Energy at the Walpole Library.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Jim?
Aye?
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And myself, yes, that is a vote, 400.
Thank you.
very much for bringing it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda tonight is discussion of the Marathon House located at 1301 Washington Street.
Sure. I know Rick's been sitting here patiently, and this is something I've been working on with him and Don for some time. As you know, the food pantry moved out of there. They've have all of their equipment out of there. The freezers were the last items to go. And the director and building maintenance director, the superintendent have come forward and asked for permission to move forward with demoing this building. I placed this item on the agenda this evening because honestly, I'd rather get this done sooner rather than later, so we don't have the carrying costs through the winter to heat it and keep the lights on and everything. We really have no use for the building at this point. Don Anderson has reminded me that's the cost for maintaining the building is as is. If we decide to go forward with some type of permanent occupation, we need to likely invest hundreds, if not millions, $1 million into that building for code updates and to address the issues that's there. So I'd like the board's permission to move forward with declaring it surplus, knocking it down, and authorizing us to proceed forward with demolition on it. And Rick, Dawn, and I will figure out how we get that done after this, but this is our first step.
Any comments, questions?
I'm just curious how much land is there. I know it's abuts with the water treatment facility. Is it a lot of land? Is it acres?
I don't believe it's a very large lot.
It's not a lot.
It's a very small parcel.
Is it not flat either? Is it elevated?
No, it is,
Or
the
is it
section that the building sits on
Yeah.
is relatively flat.
And connects with the treatment facility on a relatively level basis?
Same parcel as water treatment.
Okay, no, it makes a lot of sense.
And I think also that you had mentioned there was a possible alternative use for the water treatment to be able to expand.
Correct. It seems in all likelihood, probably within the next 5 years or so, we're going to have to expand the treatment at the Delaney Treatment Plant. And along with that will come an auxiliary building. And I believe, given where the infrastructure is located, that would be a perfect location.
Okay. You make a motion?
Please do.
I will make a motion to demolish the Marathon House located at 1301 Washington Street.
I'll second that.
All right, and roll call vote. Jim?
Aye?
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am a yes as well, and so that is a vote of 400. Thank you. Rick, for being here. We're running a little behind. And the next item on our agenda tonight is discussion and a possible vote on offer funded projects. Jim, do you want to kind of go over
Sure.
this a little bit?
So we've basically, it's going to boil down to 3 requests here. These requests have been on your list for, I'd say, I think dating back to last September. First item up is $2 million being requested for the design of the high school addition and renovations. As you know, this project has kind of been on its own. We've been working on this for a few years at this point. School committee recently voted on June 20th to accept the schematic design phase and move forward with the permanent design phase. And this will get us up to bid documents in hand, likely in time for the fall 2024 town meeting. So we can go forward and ask for a full request for the construction. Second item I'm asking the board to consider is a request of $720,000 for the Washington Street culvert. As you know, the board funded a request from town engineer Carl Baldoff for $131,000 to design that project. Rick and Carl have been working hard on that one. We're coming in on time, and we're likely going to be ready to go forward with a request for construction. So I'd like to get that out of the way at this point also. And the last request is $640,000 for design and construction of to address the pool situation. As you know, we received a report from I believe it was Vertex, who did a complete inventory of all the recreation facilities last year. They're going to come back before your board and provide you with an update on specifically the pools. But I'd like to go forward with the $640,000 request. So at this point, that would exhaust all the ARPA funds. That doesn't necessarily mean everything is spent. That will, the law, which was signed some time ago, requires the towns to identify the project before the end of 2024 and have the funds spent before the end of 2026. By identifying all the projects now, there are projects on this list that I'm looking at that have leftover funds. For example, the WHS wood duct infiltration system has $68,000 left. There'll be parts of these projects we'll have to come back to the board and request that you authorize us to go forward with reappropriating these funds towards something. So it gives myself, DPW folks who are going to be working on this, and Jody time to address all these moving parts before the end of '24. So.
I'm going to open up the board for comments. Glenn?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, start.
Sorry. Thanks. So obviously I support all three of these requests. I think obviously with the $2 million for the design of the addition and the renovations of the high school, we've been talking about that. We know where the rest of the money is going to come from, or we have a good idea where it's going to come from. Big picture, it's a $30+ million project, but there's a plan for how the rest of that's going to get paid for. So it makes sense to just kind of get the ball rolling with this additional $2 million. We've obviously, with the Washington Street culvert, the same idea. We've already funded the design, so now this is just getting us to the finish line. I do have a quick question on the pools, because I think once we sort of allocate this initial $640,000, it's going to be more expensive than that to build the pools. This will get the ball rolling on that. But do we have a sense of, and maybe this is a question for you, Jim, where the rest of the money is going to come from capital spending? Are we going to sort of like let this process unfold over several years, and we'll kind of save up for the actual project itself?
So I also have $200,000 identified in the draft capital budget plan for this coming fall. That'll get us up to $840,000, which is about what we think the design's going to cost. I know there's a few $100,000 that may need to be spent on the South Pool, more or less a Band-Aid for the next 10, 20 years to get us over the hump of fully funding a project for likely the center pool.
Yeah, I'm just asking because we're going to be kind of saving and trying to get money in for the high school renovation, and this pool is going to be an additional piece of that puzzle. I know they don't have anything to do with each other, but they both cost a lot of money. So do you have like a sort of general timeline on sort of design, 12 months from now, where it's sort of having a
I think
conversation?
a lot
again?
will have to depend on the Tri-County school situation.
That's true, yeah.
My initial thought, without that project, we do have it on our debt schedule that goes out 30, 35 years,
Right.
just a few years after the high school gets completed.
All right, that helps.
So a lot's going to depend on the vote in October and how that goes and anything that comes after it.
Okay, thanks.
Jim, do you have a comment to make?
I'll only speak to the pool. I agree on the other two. On the pools, Jim, I just think it's really important that we put emphasis on the center pool. I know that we have to do work on the south pool, wall pool, and we'll do that. But the design of that center pool, I want to make sure that that's really done well, and to include, the entire, site. So it's the splash pad, it's the pool house, it's the pool itself, it's the parking, and then we think about that area up in behind where the woods are, and the trails and the pond access and all of that. That if we do a good job on this, we've got an opportunity to build something very, very special there in the center. And so I want to make sure that center pool design is properly focused and that it's the priority of the two pools.
I agree with you, and we're going to be what we work towards.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
And I agree with all three. I think the Washington Street culvert, we've started that process. The design is ready. That is an important piece of infrastructure that we need to address. The high school design, this has been in conversation, again, as you said, since last year. We have been a part of the initial kind of plans and concepts, discussion of what areas will need to be addressed at the high school, including, I think they have listed it out, science, student space, support center, greenhouse addition, multi-purpose music, and field house and site work. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with that. And the center pool design, I kind of reiterate the same thing. I think the center pool is wonderful that we have two pools. I know they're both utilized. I realize that South Pool has a lot of concerns, but both of them are very costly projects. ARPA funding is, one-time funding, and I think it really, we've been doing our due diligence of planning to how to utilize our ARPA funding and taking projects kind of on slowly. But I do feel that the center pool is kind of right in that center of town, and we really need to focus on getting that one repaired and ready to go. So I'm comfortable with those moving forward.
And I agree, I support all three projects, but on the pool, center pool is first priority, so.
Okay. So then, Glenn, do I have a motion?
Yeah, you do. Motion to authorize the town administrator and finance director to submit a request for $2 million for the purpose of designing the addition and renovations onto the Walpole High School. Also $720,000 for the construction of the Washington Street culvert, and $640,000 toward the pool's project design and construction.
I'll second that.
Okay, and then we have a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I am a yes as well, so that is a vote 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Next on our agenda is a stadium event parking lot license at 44 Washington Street with 12 spaces. I assume all the paperwork, everything is all set for this?
So this is, was recently purchased, so the license doesn't transfer, so the new owners are now looking to utilize stadium event parking. They're going with the exact same plan that was originally approved by the building commissioner for the original owners.
All right.
Comments? All right, Glenn?
Nope,
you have a
sounds
motion?
good.
Okay, a motion to approve stadium event parking lot license at 44 Water Street with 12 spaces.
I'll second that.
All right, a roll call vote of Jim.
Aye.
Glenn.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well, so that is a vote of 4-0. Next on the agenda, we have a request for Walpole Porch Fest with Eric Hurwitz to use the town common on August 13th from 11 to 8 p.m. This is a one-day entertainment. If I assume everything's in order.
Yeah, Eric has made this request. I think this might be the third year that they've done it. So he works pretty well. He knows what he needs to submit. He started sending over the list of additional properties around the town that they're going to have the Porch Fest on. And he said that he would keep myself, which in turn will update you guys, but also Lieutenant White, let him know what properties are going to be used.
Yeah, and I have seen it on social media as well as they're advertising for an end
They're
date.
trying to get more, yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the request of Eric Hurwitz for Walpole Porch Fest to use the town common on August 13th from 11 to 8 p.m. and one-day entertainment at the town common and several properties in Walpole.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote for Jim.
Aye.
Glenn.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well, so it is a vote of 4-0. And we are moving on to consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed on the July 18th agenda posting.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote of Jim.
Aye.
Glenn.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well, it is a vote of 4-0. And now we are up to minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 5th and June 20th, 2023 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
A roll call vote of Jim.
Aye.
Glenn.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I'm a yes as well, a vote of 4-0. And town administrator update.
Sure. 2 items. Capital budget, capital requests are in. We start working through the recommendations. I'm not finalizing anything until the books are closed here with Jody and the accounting staff. She's working diligently on that. And the warrant, we're up to about 21 articles. We currently have 2 citizens petitions that were received over the last week or two. And warrant closes August 22nd. That's it.
Does anyone have any questions for Jim? Counselor Guthrie? All right, thank you very much, Jim. And we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Len?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I'm a yes as well, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Good night.